The story of village Palampur. Overview. The purpose of the story is to introduce some basic concepts relating to production, and this we do through a story of a hypothetical village called Palampur. Farming is the main activity in Palampur, whereas several other activities such as small scale manufacturing, dairy, transport, etc., are carried out on a limited scale. These production activities need various types of resources, natural resources, man made items, human effort, money, etc. As we read through the story of Palampur, we will learn how various resources combine to produce the desired goods and services in the village. Introduction. Palampur is well connected with neighboring villages and towns. Raiganj, a big village, is 3 kilometers from Palampur. An all-weather road connects the village to Raiganj and further on to the nearest small town of Shahapur. Many kinds of transport are visible on this road, starting from bullock carts, tongas, bogies, wooden cart drawn by buffaloes loaded with jaggery, gur, and other commodities to motor vehicles like motorcycles, jeeps, tractors, and trucks. This village has about 450 families belonging to several different castes. The 80 upper caste families own the majority of land in the village. Their houses, some of them quite large, are made of brick with cement plastering. The SCs, the Dalits, comprise one third of the population and live in one corner of the village and in much smaller houses, some of which are of mud and straw. Most of the houses have electric connections. Electricity powers all the tube wells in the fields and is used in various types of small business. Palampur has two primary schools and one high school. There is a primary health center run by the government and one private dispensary where the sick are treated. The description above shows that Palampur has fairly well developed system of roads, transport, electricity, irrigation, schools and health center. Compare these facilities with those in your nearby village. The story of Palampur, an imaginary village, will take us through the different types of production activities in the village. In villages across India, farming is the main production activity. The other production activities referred to as non-farm activities include small manufacturing, transport, shopkeeping, etc. We shall take a look at both these types of activities after learning a few general things about production. Organization of production. The aim of production is to produce the goods and services that we want. There are four requirements for production of goods and services. The first requirement is land and other natural resources such as water, forests, minerals. The second requirement is labor, that is, people who will do the work. Some production activities require highly educated workers to perform the necessary tasks. Other activities require workers who can do manual work. Each worker is providing the labor necessary for production. The third requirement is physical capital, that is the variety of inputs required at every stage during production. What are the items that come under physical capital? Tools, machines, buildings. Tools and machines range from very simple tools such as a farmer's plow to sophisticated machines such as generators, turbines, computers, etc. Tools, machines, buildings can be used in production over many years and are called fixed capital. Raw materials and money in hand. Production requires a variety of raw materials such as the yarn used by the weaver and the clay used by the potter. Also, some money is always required during production to make payments and buy other necessary items. Raw materials and money in hand are called working capital. Unlike tools, machines, and buildings, these are used in production. There is a fourth requirement too. You will need knowledge and enterprise to be able to put together land, labor, and physical capital and produce an output either to use yourself or to sell in the market. These days is called human capital. We shall learn more about human capital in the next chapter. In the picture, identify the land, labor, and fixed capital used in production. Every production is organized by combining land, labor, physical capital, and human capital, which are known as factors of production. As we read through the story of Palampur, we will learn more about the first three factors of production. For convenience, we will refer to the physical capital as the capital in this chapter. Farming in Palampur. Land is fixed. Farming is the main production activity in Palampur. 75% of the people who are working are dependent on farming for their livelihood. They could be farmers or farm laborers. The well being of the people is closely related to production on the farms. But remember that there is a basic constraint in raising farm production. Land area under cultivation is practically fixed. Since 1960 in Palampur, there has been no expansion in land area under cultivation. By then, some of the wastelands in the village had been converted to cultivable land. There exists no further scope to increase farm production by bringing new land under cultivation. The standard unit of measuring land is hectare. Though in the villages you may find land area being discussed in local units such as bigha, quinta, etc. When hectare equals the area of a square with one side measuring 100 meters, can you compare the area of a 1 hectare field with the area of your school ground? Is there a way one can grow more from the same land? In the kind of crops grown and facilities available, Palampur would resemble a village of the western part of the state of Uttar Pradesh. All land is cultivated in Palampur. No land is left idle. During the rainy season, Kharif farmers grow jowar and bajra. These plants are used as cattle feed. It is followed by cultivation of potato between October and December. In the winter season, rabi fields are sown with wheat. From the wheat produced, farmers keep enough wheat for the family's consumption and sell the surplus wheat at the market at Raikaj. As part of the land is devoted to sugarcane, which is harvested once every year. Sugarcane in its raw form or as jaggery is sold to the traders in Shahpur. The main reason why farmers are able to grow three different crops in a year in Palampur is due to well developed system of irrigation. Electricity came early to Palampur. Its major impact was to transform the system of irrigation. Persian wheels were till then used by farmers to draw water from the wells and irrigate small fields. People saw that the electric run tube wells could irrigate much larger areas of land more effectively. The first few tube wells were installed by the government. Soon, however, farmers started setting up private tube wells. As a result, by mid 1970s, the entire cultivated area of 200 hectares was irrigated. Not all villages in India have such high levels of irrigation. Apart from the riverine plains, coastal regions in our country are well irrigated. In contrast, plateau regions such as the Deccan Plateau have low levels of irrigation. Of the total cultivated area in the country, a little less than 40% is irrigated even today. In the remaining areas, farming is largely dependent on rainfall. To grow more than one crop on a piece of land during the year is known as multiple cropping. It is the most common way of increasing production on a given piece of land. All farmers in Palampur grow at least two main crops. Many are growing potato as their third crop in the past 15 to 20 years. Is it important to increase the area under irrigation? Why? You have read about the crops grown in Palampur. Fill in the following table based on information on the crops grown in your region. You have seen that one way of increasing production from the same land is by multiple cropping. The other way is to use modern farming methods for higher yield. Yield is measured as crop produced on a given piece of land during a single season. Till the mid 1960s, the seeds used in cultivation were traditional. Ones with relatively low yields, traditional seeds needed less irrigation. Farmers used cow dung and other natural manure as fertilizers. All these were readily available with the farmers who did not have to buy them. The Green Revolution in the late 1960s introduced the Indian farmer to cultivation of wheat and rice using high yield varieties of seeds. Compared to the traditional seeds, the HYV seeds promised to produce much greater amounts of grain on a single plant. As a result, the same piece of land would now produce far larger quantities of food grains than was possible earlier. HYV seeds, however, needed plenty of water and also chemical fertilizers and pesticides to produce best results. Higher yields were possible only from a combination of HYV seeds, irrigation, chemical fertilizers, pesticides, etc. Farmers of Punjab, Haryana, and western Uttar Pradesh were the first to try out the modern farming method in India. The farmers in these regions set up tube wells for irrigation and made use of HYV seeds, chemical fertilizers, and pesticides in farming. Some of them bought farm machinery like tractors and threshers, which made plowing and harvesting faster. They were rewarded with high yields of wheat. In Palampur, the yield of wheat grown from the traditional varieties was 1300 kgs per hectare. With HYV seeds, the yield went up to 3200 kg per hectare. There was a large increase in the production of wheat. Farmers now had greater amounts of surplus wheat to sell in the market. Modern farming methods require the farmers to start with more cash than before. Why? Will the land sustain? Land being a natural resource, it is necessary to be careful in its use. Scientific reports indicate that the modern farming methods have overused the natural resource base. In many areas, green revolution is associated with the loss of soil fertility due to increased use of chemical fertilizers. Also, continuous use of groundwater for tube well irrigation has led to the depletion of the water table. Environmental resources like soil, fertility, and groundwater are built up over years. Once destroyed, it is very difficult to restore them. We must take care of the environment to ensure future development of agriculture. Chemical fertilizers provide minerals which dissolve in water and are immediately available to plants, but these may not be retained in the soil for long. They may escape from the soil and pollute groundwater, rivers, and lakes. Chemical fertilizers can also kill bacteria and other microorganisms in the soil. This means sometime after their use, the soil will be less fertile than ever before. The consumption of chemical fertilizers in Punjab is highest in the country. The continuous use of chemical fertilizers has led to degradation of soil health. Punjab farmers are now forced to use more and more chemical fertilizers and other inputs to achieve the same production level. This means cost of cultivation is rising very fast. How is land distributed between the farmers of Palampur? You must have realized how important land is for farming. Unfortunately, not all the people engaged in agriculture have sufficient land for cultivation. In Palampur, about one third of the 450 families are landless. That is, 150 families, most of them Dalits, have no land for cultivation. Of the remaining families who own land, 240 families cultivate small plots of land less than 2 hectares in size. Cultivation of such plots doesn't bring adequate income to the farmer family. In 1960, Govind was a farmer with 2.25 hectares of largely unirrigated land. With the help of his three sons, Govind cultivated the land, though they did live very comfortably. The family managed to feed itself with a little bit of extra income from one buffalo that the family possessed. Some years after Govind's death, this land was divided among his three sons. Each one now has a plot of land that is only 0.75 hectare in size. Even with improved irrigation and modern farming method, Govind's sons are not able to make a living from their land. They have to look for additional work during part of the year. You can see the large number of small plots scattered around the village in the picture. These are cultivated by the small farmers. On the other hand, more than half of the area of the village is covered by plots that are quite large in size. In Palampur, there are 60 families of medium and large farmers who cultivate more than 2 hectares of land. A few of the large farmers have land extending over 10 hectares or more. Who will provide the labor? After land, labor is the next necessary factor for production. Farming requires a great deal of hard work. Small farmers, along with their families, cultivate their own fields, thus, they provide the labor required for farming themselves. Medium and large farmers hire farm laborers to work on their fields. Farm laborers come either from landless families or families cultivating small plots of land. Unlike farmers, farm laborers do not have a right over the crops grown on the land. Instead, they are paid wages by the farmers for whom they work. Wages can be in cash or in kind. Example, crop. Sometimes laborers get meals also. Wages vary widely from region to region, from crop to crop, from one farm activity to another, like sowing and harvesting. There is also a wide variation in the duration of employment. A farm laborer might be employed on a daily basis or for one particular farm activity like harvesting or for the whole year. Dala is a landless farm laborer who works on daily wages in Palampur. This means he must regularly look for work. The minimum wages for farm laborer set by the government is rupees 300 per day as per March 2017, but Dala gets only rupees 160. There is heavy competition for work among the farm laborers in Palampur, so people agree to work for lower wages. Lala complains about his situation to Ramkali, who is another farm laborer. Both Dala and Ramkali are among the poorest people in the village. The capital needed in farming. You have already seen that the modern farming methods require a great deal of capital, so that the farmer now needs more money than before. Most small farmers have to borrow money to arrange for the capital. They borrow from large farmers or the village money lenders or the traders who supply various inputs for cultivation. The rate of interest on such loans is very high. They are put to great distress to repay the loan. Savita is a small farmer. She plans to cultivate wheat on her 1 hectare of land. Besides seeds, fertilizers, and pesticides, she needs cash to buy water and repair her farm instruments. She estimates that the working capital itself would cost a minimum of rupees 3,000. She doesn't have the money, so she decides to borrow from Tejpal Singh, a large farmer. Tejpal Singh agrees to give Savita the loan at an interest rate of 24% for 4 months, which is a very high interest rate. Savita also has to promise to work on his fields as a farm laborer during the harvest season at rupees 100 per day. As you can tell, this wage is quite low. Savita knows that she will have to work very hard to complete harvesting on her own field and then work as a farm laborer for Tejpal Singh. The harvest time is very busy time. As a mother of three children, she has a lot of household responsibilities. Savita agrees to this tough conditions as she knows getting a loan is difficult for a small farmer. In contrast to the small farmers, the medium and large farmers have their own savings from farming. They are thus able to arrange for the capital needed. How do these farmers have their own savings? You shall find the answer in the next section. Let's discuss the story so far. We have read about the three factors of production: land, labor, and capital, and how they are used in farming. Let us fill in the blanks given below. Among the three factors of production, we found that labor is the most abundant factor of production. There are many people who are willing to work as farm laborers in the villages, whereas the opportunities of work are limited. They belong to either landless families or small farmers. They are paid low wages and lead a difficult life. In contrast to labor, land is a scarce factor of production. Cultivated land area is fixed. Moreover, even the existing land is distributed unequally among the people engaged in farming. There are a large number of small farmers who cultivate small plots of land and live in conditions not much better than the landless farm laborer. To make the maximum use of the existing land, farmers use chemical fertilizers and pesticides. Both these have led to increase in production of crops. Modern farming methods require a great deal of multiple cropping technique. Small farmers usually need to borrow money to arrange for the capital and are put to great distress to repay the loan. Therefore, capital tool is a scarce factor of production, particularly for the small farmers. Though both land and capital are scarce, there is a basic difference between the two factors of production. Land is a natural resource, whereas capital is a man made. It is possible to increase capital, whereas land is fixed. Therefore, it is very important that we take good care of land and other natural resources used in farming. Sale of surplus farm products. Let us suppose that the farmers have produced wheat on their land using three factors of production. The wheat is harvested and production is complete. What do the farmers do with the wheat? They retain a part of the wheat for the family's consumption and sell the surplus wheat. Small farmers like Savita and Gobind's son have little surplus wheat because their total production is small, and from this a substantial share is kept for their own family needs. So it is the medium and large farmers who supply wheat to the market. In the picture 1.1, you can see the bullock cart streaming into the market, each carrying loads of wheat. The traders at the market buy the wheat and sell it further to shopkeepers in the towns and cities. Tejpal Singh. The large farmer has a surplus of 350 quintals of wheat from all his lands. He sells the surplus wheat at the Raiganj market and has good earnings. What does Tejpal Singh do with his earnings? Last year, Tejpal Singh had put most of the money in his bank account. Later, he used the savings for lending to farmers like Savita, who were in need of a loan. He also used the savings to arrange for the working capital for farming in the next season. This year, Tejpal Singh plans to use his earnings to buy another tractor. Another tractor would increase his fixed capital. Like Tejpal Singh, other large and medium farmers sell the surplus farm products. A part of the earnings is saved and kept for buying capital for the next season. Thus, they are able to arrange the capital for farming from their own savings. Some farmers might also use the savings to buy cattle, trucks, or to set up shops. As we shall see, this constitute the capital for non-farm activities. Non-farm activities in Palampur. We have learnt about farming as the main production activity in Palampur. We shall now take a look at some of the non-farm production activities. Only 25% of the people working in Palampur are engaged in activities other than agriculture. Dairy, the other common activity. Dairy is a common activity in many families of Palampur. People feed their buffaloes on various kinds of grass and the jawar and the bajra that grows during the rainy season. The milk is sold in Raiganj, the nearby large village. Two traders from Shahapur town have set up collection cum chilling centers at Raiganj from where the milk is transported to far away town and cities. An example of small-scale manufacturing in Palampur. At present, less than 50 people are engaged in manufacturing in Palampur. Unlike the manufacturing that takes place in the big factories in the towns and cities, manufacturing in Palampur involves very simple production methods and are done on small scale. They are carried out mostly at home or in the fields with the help of family labor. Rarely are laborers hired. Mishri Lal has purchased a mechanical sugarcane crushing machine run on electricity and has set it up on his field. Sugarcane crushing was earlier done with the help of bullocks, but people refer to do it by machines these days. Mishrilal also buys sugarcane from other farmers and processes it onto jaggery. The jaggery is then sold to traders at Shahpur. In the process, Mishrilal makes a small profit. The shopkeepers of Palampur. People involved in trade exchange of goods are not many in Palampur. The traders of Palampur are shopkeepers who buy various goods from wholesale markets in the cities and sell them in the village. You will see small general stores in the village selling a wide range of items like rice, wheat, sugar, tea, oil, biscuits, soap, toothpaste, batteries, candles, notebooks, pencil, even some clothes. A few of the families whose houses are close to the bus stand have used a part of the space to open small shops. They sell eatables. Karim has opened a computer class center in the village. In recent years, a large number of students have been attending college in Shahpur town. Karim found that a number of students from the village are also attending computer classes in the town. There were two women in the village who had a degree in computer applications. He decided to employ them. He bought computers and set up the classes in the front room of their house overlooking the market. High school students have started attending them in good numbers. Transport, a fast developing sector. There are variety of vehicles on the road connecting Palampur to Raiganj. Rickshawalas, tongawalas, jeep, tractor, truck drivers and people driving the traditional bullock cart and bogie are people in the transport services. They ferry people and goods from one place to another and in return get paid for it. The number of people involved in transport has grown over the last several years. Kishore Kishora is a farm laborer like other such laborers. Kishora found it difficult to meet his family's needs from the wages that he received. A few years back, Kishora took a loan from the bank. This was under a government program which was giving cheap loans to poor landless households. Kishora bought a buffalo with this money. He now sells the buffalo's milk. Further, he has attached a wooden cart to his buffalo and uses it to transport various items. Once a week, he goes to the river Ganga to bring back clay for the potter. Sometimes he goes to Shahapur with a load of jaggery or other commodities. Every month he gets some work in transport. As a result, Kishora is able to earn more than what he used to do some years back. Chapter 2, People as Resource Overview. The chapter People as a Resource is an effort to explain population as an asset for the economy rather than a liability. Population becomes human capital when there is investment made in the form of education, training, and medical care. In fact, human capital is the stock of skill and productive knowledge embodied in them. People as a resource is a way of referring to a country's working people in terms of their existing productive skills and abilities. Looking at the population from this productive aspect emphasizes its ability to contribute to the creation of the gross national product. Like others resources, population also is a resource. A human resource. This is the positive side of a large population that is often overlooked when we look only at the negative side, considering only the problems of providing the population with food, education, and access to health facilities. When the existing human resource is further developed by becoming more educated and healthy, we call it human capital formation. That adds to the productive power of the country, just like physical capital formation. Investment in human capital through education, training, medical care yields a return just like investment in physical capital. This can be seen directly in the form of higher incomes earned because of higher productivity of the more educated or the better trained persons, as well as the higher productivity of healthier people. Not only do the more educated and the healthier people gain through higher incomes, society also gains in other indirect ways because the advantages of a more educated or a healthier population spreads to those also who themselves were not directly educated or given health care. In fact, human capital is the one way superior to other resources like land and physical capital. Human resource can make use of land and capital. Land and capital cannot become useful on its own. For many decades in India, a large population has been considered a liability rather than an asset. But a large population need not be a burden for the economy. It can be turned into a productive asset by investment in human capital. For example, by spending resources on education and health for all, training of industrial and agriculture workers in the use of modern technology, useful scientific researches, and so on. The two following cases illustrate how people can try to become a more productive resource. Story of Sakal. There were two friends, Vilas and Sakal, living in the same village, Simapur. Sakal was a 12-year-old boy. His mother Sheila looked after domestic chores. His father Butta Chaudhary worked in an agricultural field. Sakal helped his mother in domestic chores. He also looked after his younger brother Jitu and sister Situ. His uncle Shyam had passed the matriculation examination but was sitting idle in the house as he had no job. Butta and Sheila were eager to teach Sakal. They forced him to join the village school, which he soon joined. He started studying and completed his higher secondary examination. His father persuaded him to continue his studies. He raised a loan for Sakal to study a vocational course in computers. Sakal was meritorious and interested in studies from the beginning. With great vigor and enthusiasm, he completed his course. After some time, he got a job in a private firm. He even designed a new kind of software. This software helped him increase the sale of the firm. His boss acknowledged his services and rewarded him with a promotion. Story of Vilas. Vilas was an 11-year-old boy residing in the same village as Sakal. Vilas' father Mahesh was a fisherman. His father passed away when he was only 2 years old. His mother Geeta sold fish to earn money to feed the family. She bought fish from the landowner's pond and sold it in the nearby mandi. She could earn only rupees 150 a day by selling fish. Vilas became a patient of arthritis. His mother could not afford to take him to the doctor. He could not go to school either. He was not interested in studies. He helped his mother in cooking and also looked after his younger brother Mohan. After some time, his mother fell sick and there was no one to look after her. There was no one in the family to support them. Vilas too was forced to sell fish in the same village. He, like his mother, earned only a mere income. In the two case studies we saw, Sakal went to school and Vilas did not go. Sakal was physically strong and healthy. There was no need for him to visit the doctor frequently. Vilas was a patient of arthritis. He lacked the means to visit the doctor. Sakal acquired a degree in computer programming. Sakal found a job in a private firm while Vilas continued with the same work as his mother. He earned a meager income like his mother to support a family. In the case of Sakal, several years of education added to the quality of labor. This enhanced his total productivity. Total productivity adds to the growth of the economy. This in turn pays an individual through salary or in some other form of his choice. In case of Vilas, there could not be any education or health care in the early part of his life. He spends his life selling fish like his mother. Henceforth, he draws the same salary of unskilled laborer as his mother. Investment in human resource via education and medical care can give high rates of return in future. This investment on people is the same as investment in land and capital. A child too with investments made on her education and health can yield a high return in future in the form of higher earnings and greater contribution to the society. Educated parents are found to invest more heavily on the education of their children. This is because they have realized the importance of education for themselves. They are also conscious of proper nutrition and hygiene. They accordingly look after their children's needs for education at school and good health. A virtuous cycle is thus created in this case. In contrast, a vicious cycle may be created by disadvantaged parents who themselves uneducated and lacking in hygiene keep their children in a similarly disadvantaged state. Countries like Japan have invested in human resource. They did not have any natural resource. These countries are developed or rich. They import the natural resources needed in their country. How did they become rich or developed? They have invested on people, especially in the field of education and health. These people have made efficient use of other resources like land and capital. Efficiency and the technology evolved by people have made these countries rich or developed. Economic activities by men and women. Like Vilas and Sakal, people who have been engaged in various activities, we saw that Vilas sold fish and Sakal got a job in the firm. The various activities have been classified into three main sectors, that is primary, secondary, and tertiary. Primary sector includes agriculture, forestry, animal husbandry, fishing, poultry, farming, mining, and quarrying. Manufacturing is included in the secondary sector. Trade, transport, communication, banking, education, health, tourism, service, insurance, etc. are included in the tertiary sector. The activities in this sector result in the production of goods and services. These activities add value to the national income. These activities are called economic activities. Economic activities have two parts: market activities and non-market activities. Market activities involve remuneration to anyone who performs, that is, activity performed for pay or profit. These include production of goods or services, including government services. Non-market activities are production for self-consumption. These can be consumption and processing of primary product and own account production of fixed assets. Due to historical and cultural reasons, there is a division of labor between men and women in the family. Women generally look after domestic chores, and men work in the fields. Sakal's mother, Sheila, cooks food, cleans utensils, washes clothes, cleans the house, and looks after her children. Sakal's father, Bhutta, cultivates the field, sells the produce in the market and earns money for the family. Sheila is not paid for the services delivered for upbringing of the family. Buddha earns money, which he spends on rearing his family. Women are not paid for their services delivered in the family. The household work done by women is not recognized in the national income. Geeta, mother of Vilas, earned an income by selling fish. Thus, women are paid for their work when they enter the labor market. Their earning, like that of their male counterpart, is determined on the basis of education and skill. Education helps individual to make better use of the economic opportunities available before him. Education and skill are their major determinants of the earning of any individual in the market. A majority of women have mere education and low skill formation. Women are paid low compared to men. Most women work where job security is not there. Various activities relating to legal protection is meagre. Employment in this sector is characterized by irregular and low income. In this sector, there is an absence of basic facilities like maternity leave, child care, and other social security systems. However, women with high education and skill formation are paid at par with the men. Among the organized sector, teaching and medicine attract them the most. Some women have entered administrative and other services including jobs that need high levels of scientific and technological competency. Ask your sister or your classmate what she would like to take up as a career. Quality of population. The quality of population depends upon the literacy rate. Health of a person indicated by life expectancy and skill formation acquired by the people of the country. The quality of the population ultimately decides the growth rate of the country. Literate and healthy population are an asset. Education. Sakal's education in the initial years of his life bore him the fruits in the latter years in terms of a good job and salary. We saw education was an important input for the growth of Sakal. It opened new horizons for him, provided new aspirations and developed values of life. Not only for Sakal, education contributes towards the growth of society also. It enhances the national income, cultural richness, and increases the efficiency of governance. There is a provision made for providing universal access, retention, and quality in elementary education with a special emphasis on girls. There is also an establishment of base setting of schools like Navodaya Vidyalaya in each district. Vocational streams have been developed to equip large number of high school students with occupations related to knowledge and skills. The plan outlay on education has increased from rupees 151 crore in the first plan to rupees 3766.90 crore in the 11th plan. The expenditure on education as a percentage of GDP rose from 0.64% in 1951 to 52 to 3% in 2015 to 16 and has remained stagnant around 3% from past few years. The budgetary estimate as stated in the budget. Documents of state governments, Reserve Bank of India, the expenditure on education as a percentage of GDP has declined to 2.7% in 2017 to 18. The literacy rates have increased from 18% in 1951 to 74% in 2010 to 11. Literacy is not only a right, it is also needed if the citizens are to perform their duties and enjoy their rights properly. However, a vast difference is noticed across different sections of the population. Literacy among males is nearly 16.6% higher than females, and it is about 16.1% higher in urban areas as compared to rural areas. In 2011, literacy rates varied from 94% in Kerala to 62% in Bihar. The primary school system has expanded to over 8.41 lakh in 2015 to 16. Unfortunately, this huge expansion of schools has been diluted by the poor quality of schooling and high dropout rates. Sarva Siksha Abhiyan is a significant step towards providing elementary education to all children in the age group of 6 to 14 years by 2010. It is a time-bound initiative of the central government in partnership with the state, the local government, and the community for achieving the goal of universalization of elementary education. Along with it, it bridges courses and back to school campus have been initiated to increase the enrollment in elementary education. Midday meal scheme has been implemented to encourage attendance and retention of children and improve their nutritional status. These policies could add to the literate population of India. The 12th plan endeavored to raise the country's gross enrollment ratio in higher education in the age group of 18 to 23 years to 25.2% by 2017 to 18 and to reach the target of 30% by 2020-21, which would be broadly in line with world average. The strategy focuses on increasing access, quality, adoption of state-specific curriculum modification, vocationalization, and networking on the use of information technology. The plan also focuses on distance education, convergence of formal, non-formal, distance, and IT education institutions. Over the past 50 years, there has been a significant growth in the number of university and institutions of higher learning in specialized areas. Let us read the table to see the increase in the number of college universities, enrollment of students and recruitment of teachers from 1951 to 2015 to 16. Health. Firm maximize profit. Do you think any firm would be induced to employ people who might not work efficiently as healthy workers because of ill health? The health of a person helps him to realize his or her potential and the ability to fight illness. He or she will not be able to maximize his or her output to the overall growth of the organization. Indeed, health is an indispensable basis for realizing one's well-being. Henceforth, improvement in the health status of the population has been the priority of the country. A national policy too aims at improving the accessibility of healthcare, family welfare, and nutritional service with a special focus on the underprivileged segment of the population. Over the last 5 decades, India was built a vast health infrastructure and has also played the manpower required at primary, secondary, and tertiary sector in government as well as in the private sector. These measures, which have been adopted, have increased the life expectancy to over 68.3 years in 2014. Infant mortality rate has come down from 147 in 1951 to 34 in 2016. Crude birth rates have dropped to 20.4 and death rates to 6.4 within the same duration of time. Increase in life expectancy and improvement in childcare are useful in assessing the future progress of the country. Increase in longevity of life is an indicator of good quality of life marked by self-confidence. Reduction in infant mortality involves the protection of children from infection, ensuring the nutrition of both the mother and the child, and child care. There are many places in India which do not have even these basic facilities. There are only 381 medical colleges in the country and 301 dental colleges. Just four states like Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Maharashtra, and Tamil Nadu have the maximum number of colleges. Unemployment. Sakal's mother Sheila looked after the domestic chores, children, and helped her husband Bhuta in the field. Sakal's brother Jitu and sister Situ spend their time playing and roaming. Can you call Sheila or Jitu or Situ unemployed? If not, why? Unemployment is said to exist when people who are willing to work at the going wages cannot find jobs. Sheila is not interested in working outside her domestic domain. Jitu and Situ are too small to be counted in the workforce population. Neither Jitu, Situ, or Sheila can be counted as unemployed. The workforce population includes people from 15 years to 59 years. Sakal's brother and sister do not fall within this age group, so they cannot be called unemployed. Sakal's mother Sheila works for the family. She is not willing to work outside her domestic domain for payment. She too cannot be called unemployed. Sakal's grandparents, although not mentioned in the story, cannot be called unemployed. In case of India, we have unemployment in rural and urban areas. However, the nature of unemployment differs in rural and urban areas. In case of rural areas, there is seasonal and disguised employment. Urban areas have mostly educated em- unemployment. Seasonal unemployment happens when people are not able to find jobs during some months of the year. People dependent upon agriculture usually face such kind of problem. There are certain busy seasons when sowing, harvesting, weeding, and threshing is done. Certain months do not provide much work to the people dependent on agriculture. In case of disguised unemployment, people appear to be employed. They have agricultural plot where they find work. This usually happens among family members engaged in agricultural activity. The work requires the service of 5 people but engages 8 people. 3 people are extra. These 3 people also work in the same plot as the others. The contribution made by the 3 extra people does not add to the contribution made by the 5 people. If 3 people are removed, the productivity of the field will not decline. The field requires the service of 5 people, and the 3 extra people are disguised unemployed. In case of urban areas, educated unemployment has become a common phenomenon. Many youth with matriculation, graduation, and post-graduation degrees are not able to find job. A study showed that unemployment of graduate and postgraduate has increased faster than among matriculates. A paradoxical manpower situation is witnessed as surplus of manpower in certain categories coexist with shortage of manpower in others. There is unemployment among technically qualified persons on one hand, while there is a dearth of technical skills required for economic growth. Unemployment leads to wastage of manpower resource. People who are an asset for the economy turn into a liability. There is a feeling of hopelessness and despair among the youth. People do not have enough money to support their family. Inability of educated people who are willing to work to find gainful employment implies a great social waste. Unemployment tends to increase economic overload. The dependence of the unemployed on the working population increases. The quality of life of an individual as well as of society is adversely affected. When a family has to live on a bare subsistence level, there is a general decline in its health status and rising withdrawal from the school system. Hence, unemployment has a detrimental impact on the overall growth of an economy. Increase in unemployment is an indicator of a depressed economy. It also wastes the resource which could have been gainfully employed. If people cannot be used as a resource, they naturally appear as liability to the economy. In case of India, statistically, the unemployment rate is low. A large number of people represented with low income and productivity are counted as employed. They appear to work throughout the year, but in terms of their potential and income, it is not adequate for them. The work that they are pushing, they are pursuing, seems forced upon them. They may therefore want other work of their choice. Poor people cannot afford to sit idle. They tend to engage in any activity irrespective of its earning potential. Their earning keeps them on a bare subsistence level. Moreover, the employment structure is characterized by self-employment in the primary sector. The whole family contributes in the field even though not everybody is really needed. So there is disguised unemployment in the agriculture sector, but the entire family shares what has been produced. This concept of sharing of work in the field and the produce raised reduces the hardship of unemployment in the rural sector. But this does not reduce the poverty of the family. Gradually, surplus labor from every household tends to migrate from the village in search of jobs. Let us discuss about the employment scenario in the three sectors mentioned earlier. Agriculture is the most labor absorbing sector of the economy. In recent years, there has been a decline in the dependence of population on agriculture partly because of disguised unemployment discussed earlier. Some of the surplus labor in agriculture has moved to either the secondary or the tertiary sector. In the secondary sector, small scale manufacturing is the most labor absorbing. In case of the tertiary sector, various new services are now appearing like biotechnology, information technology, and so on. Let us read a story to know how people could become an asset for the economy of a village. Story of a village. There was a village inhabited by several families. Each family produced enough to feed its members. Each family met its needs by the members making their own clothes and teaching their own children. One of the families decided to send one of its sons to an agriculture college. The boy got his admission in the nearby College of Agriculture. After some time, he became qualified in agro engineering and came back to the village. He proved to be so creative that he could design an improved type of plow, which increased the yield of wheat. Thus, a new job of agro engineer was created and filled in the village. The family in the village sold the surplus in nearby neighboring village. They earned good profit, which they shared among themselves. Inspired by this success, all the families after some time held a meeting in the village. They all wanted to have a better future for their children too. They requested the panchayat to open a school in the village. They assured the panchayat that they would all send their children to school. The panchayat, with the help of government, opened a school. Teacher was recruited from a nearby town. All the children of this village started going to school. After some time, one of the families gave training to his daughter in tailoring. She started stitching clothes for all the families of the village, for everyone now wanted to buy and wear well tailored clothes. Thus, another new job, that of a tailor, was created. This had another positive effect. The time of the farmers is going for buying clothes was saved. As the farmers spent more time in the field, the yield of the farms went up. This was the beginning of prosperity. The farmers had more than what they could consume. Now they could sell what they produced to others who come to their village market. Over time, this village, which formerly had no job opportunities in the beginning, had many like teachers, tailor, agro engineer, and many more. This was the story of a simple village where the rising level of human capital enabled it to evolve into a place rich with complex and modern economic activities. Chapter 3: Poverty as a Challenge. Overview. This chapter deals with one of the most difficult challenges faced by independent India: poverty. After discussing this multidimensional problem through examples, the chapter discusses the way poverty is seen in social science. Poverty trends in India and the world are illustrated through the concept of the poverty line. Causes of poverty as well as anti-poverty measures taken by the government are also discussed. The chapter ends with broadening the official concept of poverty with human poverty. Introduction. In our daily life, we come across many people who we think are poor. They could be landless, laborless in villages, or people living in overcrowded juggies in cities. They could be daily wage workers at construction sites or child workers in dhabas. They could also be beggars with children in tatters. We see poverty all around us. In fact, every fourth person in India is poor. This means roughly 270 million or 27 crore people in India live in poverty 2011 to 12. This also means that India has the largest single concentration of the poor in the world. This illustrates the seriousness of the challenge. Two typical cases of poverty. Urban case. 33-year-old Ram Saran works as a daily wage laborer in a wheat flour mill near Ranchi in Jharkhand. He manages to earn around rupees 1,500 a month when he finds employment, which is not of him. The money is not enough to sustain his family of six, that includes his wife and four children aged between 12 years to 6 months. He has to spend money home to his old parents who live in a village near Ramgarh. His father, a landless laborer, depends on Ram Saran and his brother who lives in Hazaribagh for sustenance. Ram Saran lives in a one-room rented house in a crowded basti in the outskirts of the city. It's a temporary shack built of bricks and clay tiles. His wife, Santa Devi, works as a part-time maid in a few houses and manages to earn another rupees 800. They manage to make a meal, a dal and rice twice a day, but there's never enough for all of them. His elder son works as a helper in a tea shop to supplement the family income and earns another rupees 300 while his 10-year-old daughter takes care of the younger siblings. None of the children go to school. They have only two pairs of hand-me-down clothes each. New ones are bought only when the old clothes become unwearable. Shoes are a luxury. The younger kids are undernourished. They have no access to healthcare when they fall ill. Rural case. Lakha Singh belongs to a small village near Meerut in Uttar Pradesh. His family doesn't own any land, so they do odd jobs for the big farmers. Work is erratic and so is income. At times they get paid for rupees 50 for a hard day's work, but often it's in kind like a few kilograms of wheat or dal or even vegetables for toiling in the farm. Through the day, the family of eight cannot always manage two square meals a day. Lakha lives in a kacha hut on the outskirts of the village. The women of the family spend the day chopping fodder and collecting firewood in the fields. His father, a TB patient, passed away 2 years ago due to lack of medication. His mother now suffers from the same disease and life is slowly ebbing away. Although the village has a primary school, Laka never went there. He had to start earning when he was 10 years old. New clothes happen once in a few years. Even soap and oil are a luxury for the family. Study the above cases of poverty and discuss the following issues related to poverty: landlessness, unemployment, size of family, illiteracy, poor health or malnutrition, child labor, helplessness. These two typical cases illustrate many dimensions of poverty. They show that poverty means hunger and lack of shelter. It is also it also is a situation in which parents are not able to send their children to school or a situation where sick people cannot afford treatment. Poverty means lack of clean water and sanitization facilities. It also means lack of a regular job at a minimum decent level. Above all, it means living with a sense of helplessness. Poor people are in a situation in which they are ill treated at almost every place, in farms, factories, government offices, hospitals, railway stations, etc. Obviously, nobody would like to live in poverty. One of the biggest challenges of independent India has been to bring millions of its people out of abject poverty. Mahatma Gandhi always insisted that India would be truly independent only when the poorest of its people become free of human suffering. Poverty, as seen by social scientists, since poverty has many facets, social scientists look at it through a variety of indicators. Usually, the indicators used to relate the levels of income and consumption, but now poverty is looked through other social indicators like illiteracy, lack of general resistance due to malnutrition, lack of access to healthcare, lack of job opportunities, lack of access to safe drinking water, sanitization, etc. Analysis of poverty based on social exclusion and vulnerability is now becoming very common. Social exclusion. According to this concept, poverty must be seen in terms of the poor having to live only in a poor surrounding with other poor people, excluded from enjoying social equality of better off people in better surroundings. Social exclusion can be both a cause as well as a consequence of poverty. In the usual sense, broadly, it is a process through which individuals or groups are excluded from facilities, benefits, and opportunities that others, their betters, enjoy. A typical example is the working of the caste system in India, in which people belonging to certain castes are excluded from equal opportunity. Social exclusion thus may lead to but can cause more damage than having a very low income. Vulnerability to poverty is a measure which describes the greater probability of certain communities, say members of a backward caste or individuals such as a widow or a physical handicapped person, of becoming or remaining poor in the coming years. Vulnerability is determined by the option available to different communities for finding an alternative living in terms of assets, education, health, and job opportunities. Further, it is analyzed on the basis of the greater risk these groups face at the time of natural disasters, earthquakes, tsunami, terrorism, etc. Additional analysis is made of their social and economic ability to handle these risks. In fact, vulnerability describes the greater probability of being more adversely affected than other people when bad time comes for everybody. Whether a flood or an earthquake or simply a fall in the availability of jobs. Poverty line. At the center of the discussion on poverty is usually the concept of poverty line. A common method used to measure poverty is based on the income or consumption levels. A person is considered poor if his or her income or consumption level falls below a given minimum level necessary to fulfill the basic needs. What is necessary to satisfy the basic need is different at different times and in different countries. Therefore, poverty line may vary with time and place. Each country uses an imaginary line that is considered appropriate for its existing level of development and its accepted minimum social norms. For example, a person not having a car in the United States may be considered poor. In India, owning of a car is still considered a luxury. While determining the poverty line in India, a minimum level of food requirement, clothing, footwear, fuel, and light, educational and medical requirement, etc., are determined for subsistence. These physical quantities are multiplied by their prices in rupees. The present formula for food requirement while estimating the poverty line is based on the desired calorie requirement. Food items such as cereals, pulses, vegetable milk, oil, sugar, etc. together provide these needed calories. The calorie needs vary depending on age, sex, and type of work that a person does. The accepted average calorie requirement in India is 2400 calories per person per day in rural areas and 2100 calories per day in urban areas. Since people living in rural areas engage themselves in more physical work, calorie requirement in rural areas are considered to be higher than in urban areas. The monetary expenditure per capita needed for buying these calorie requirements in terms of food, grains, etc., is revised periodically, taking into consideration the rise in prices. On the basis of these calculations for the year 2011 to 12, the poverty line for a person was fixed at rupees 816 per month for rural areas and rupees 1000 for urban areas. Despite less calorie requirement, the higher amount for urban areas has been fixed because of high prices of many essential products in urban centers. In this way, in the year 2011 to 12, a family of 5 members living in rural areas and earning less than about rupees 4080 per month well below the poverty line. A similar family in the urban areas would need a minimum of rupees 5,000 per month to meet their basic requirements. The poverty line is estimated periodically, normally every 5 years, by conducting sample surveys. These surveys are carried out by the National Sample Survey Organization. However, for making comparisons between developing countries, many international organizations like the World Bank use a uniform standard for the poverty line. Minimum availability of the equivalent of $1.90 per person per day. Poverty estimates. It is clear from Table 3.1 that there is a substantial decline in poverty ratios in India from about 45% in 1993 to 94 to 37.2% in 2004 to 5. The proportion of people below poverty line further came down to about 22% in 2011 to 12. If the trend continues, people below poverty line may come down to less than 20% in the next few years. Although the percentage of people living under poverty declined in the earlier two decades, 1973 to 1993. The number of poor declined from 407 million in 2004 to 2005 to 270 million in 2011-12, with an average annual decline of 2.2 percentage points during 2004 to 5 to 2011 to 2012. Vulnerable groups. The proportion of people below poverty line is also not same for all social groups and economic categories in India. Social groups which are most vulnerable to poverty are scheduled caste and scheduled tribe households. Similarly, among the economic groups, the most vulnerable groups are the rural agricultural labor households and the urban casual labor households. Graph 3.1 shows the percentage of poor people in all these groups. Although the average for people below poverty line for all groups in India is 20 to 43 out of 100, people belonging to scheduled tribes are not able to meet their basic needs. Similarly, 34% of casual workers in urban areas are below poverty line. About 34% of casual labor farm in rural areas and 29% of scheduled castes are also poor. The double disadvantage of being a landless casual wage labor household in the socially disadvantaged social groups of the scheduled caste or the scheduled tribe population highlights the seriousness of the problem. Some recent studies have shown that, except for the scheduled tribe households, all the other three groups, that is, the scheduled caste, rural agricultural laborers, and the urban casual labor households, have seen a decline in poverty in 1990s. Apart from these social groups, there is also inequality in of incomes within a family. In poor families, all suffer, but some suffer more than others. In some cases, women, elderly people, and female infants are denied equal access to resources available to the family. Story of Shivaraman. Shivaraman lives in a small village near Karur town in Tamil Nadu. Karur is famous for its handloom and powerloom fabrics. There are 100 families in the village. Sivaraman and Arundhatiar Kopner by caste now works as an agricultural laborer for rupees 160 per day, but that's only for 5 to 6 months in a year. At other times, he does odd jobs in the town. His wife Sasikala too works with him, but she can rarely find work these days, and even if she does, she she's paid rupees 100 per day for the same work that Shivaraman does. There are 8 members in the family. Shivaraman's 65-year-old widowed mother is ill and needs to be helped with her daily chores. He has a 25-year-old unmarried sister and four children aged between 1 year to 16 years. Three of them are girls. The youngest is a son. None of the girls go to school. Buying books and other things for school going girls is a luxury he cannot afford. Also, he has to get them married at some point of time, so he doesn't want to spend on their education now. His mother has lost interest in life and is just waiting to die someday. His sister and elder daughter take care of the household. Sivaraman plans to send his son to school when he comes of age. His unmarried sister does not get along with his wife. Sasikala finds her a burden, but Sivaraman can't find a suitable groom due to lack of money. Although the family has difficulty in arranging 2 meals a day, Sivaraman manages to buy milk once in a while, but only for his son. Let's discuss. Observe some of the poor families around you and try to find the following. Which social and economic group do they belong to? Who are the earning members in the family? What is the condition of the people in the family? Are all the children boys and girls attending schools? Interstate disparities. Poverty in India also has another aspect or dimension. The proportion of poor people is not the same in every state, although state level poverty has witnessed a secular decline from the levels of early 17th. The success rate of reducing poverty varies from state to state. Recent estimates show while in all India head count ratio was 21.9% in 11-12, states like Madhya Pradesh, Assam, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, and Odisha had above all Indian poverty level. As the graph 3.2 shows, Bihar and Odisha continue to be the two poorest states with poverty ratios of 33.7 and 32.6% respectively. Along with rural poverty, urban poverty is also high in Odisha, Madhya Pradesh, Bihar, and Uttar Pradesh. In comparison, there has been a significant decline in poverty in Kerala, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, and West Bengal. States like Punjab and Haryana have traditionally succeeded in reducing poverty with the help of high agricultural growth rates. Kerala has focused more on human resource development. In West Bengal, land reforms measures have helped in reducing poverty. In Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu, public distribution of food grains could have been responsible for the improvement. Global poverty scenario. The proportion of people in different countries living in extreme economic poverty, defined by the World Bank as living on less than $1.90 per day, has fallen from 36% in 1990 to 10% in 2015. Although there has been a substantial reduction in global poverty, it is marked with great regional differences. Poverty declined substantially in China and Southeast Asian countries as a result of rapid economic growth and massive investments in human resource development. Number of poor in China has come down from 88.3% in 1981 to 14.7% in 2008 to 0.7% in 2015. In the countries of South Asia, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bangladesh, Bhutan, the decline has also been rapid. 34% in 2005 to 16.2% in 2013. With the decline in the percentage of the poor, the number of poor has also declined significantly from 510.4 million in 2005 to 274.5 million in 2013. Because of different poverty line definition, poverty in India is also shown higher than the national estimates. In sub-Saharan Africa, poverty in fact declined from 51% in 2005 to 41% in 2015. In Latin America, the ratio of poverty has also declined from 10% in 2005 to 4% in 2015. Poverty has also resurfaced In some of the former socialist countries like Russia, where officially it was non existent earlier, Table 3.2 shows the proportion of people living under poverty in different countries as defined by the International Poverty Line, means population below $1.90 a day. The new Sustainable Development Goals of the UN proposes ending poverty of all types by 2030. Causes of poverty. There were a number of causes for the widespread poverty in India. One historical reason is the low level of economic development under the British colonial administration. The policies of the colonial government ruined traditional handicrafts and discouraged the development of industries like textiles. The low rate of growth persisted until the 1980s. This resulted in less job opportunities and low growth rate of incomes. This was accompanied by a high growth rate of population. The two combined to make the growth rate of per capita income very low. The failure at both the fronts, promotion of economic growth and population control, perpetuated the cycle of poverty. With the spread of irrigation and the green revolution, many job opportunities were created in the agriculture sector. But the effects were limited in some parts of India. The industries, both in the public and the private sector, did provide some jobs, but these were not enough to absorb all the job seekers. Unable to find proper jobs in cities, many people started working as rickshaw pullers, vendors, construction workers, domestic servants, etc. With irregular small incomes, these people could not afford expensive housing. They started living in slums on the outskirts of the city and the problems of poverty. Largely a rural phenomena also became the feature of the urban sector. Another feature of high poverty rates has been the huge income inequalities. One of the major reasons for this is the unequal distribution of land and other resources. Despite many policies, we have not been able to tackle the issue in a meaningful manner. Major policy initiatives like land reforms, which aimed at redistribution of assets in rural areas, have not been implemented properly and effectively by most of the state governments, since lack of land resources has been one of the major causes of poverty in India. Proper implementation of policy could have improved the life of millions of rural poor. Many other socio-cultural and economic factors also are responsible for poverty. In order to fulfill social obligations and observe religious ceremonies, people in India, including the very poor, spend a lot of money. Small farmers need money to buy agricultural inputs like seeds, fertilizers, pesticides, etc. Since poor people hardly have any savings, they borrow. Unable to repay because of poverty, they become victims of indebtedness. So, the high level of indebtedness is both the cause and effect of poverty. Anti poverty measures. Removal of poverty has been one of the major objectives of Indian developmental strategy. The current anti poverty strategy of the government is based broadly on two planks: promotion of economic growth, second is targeted anti poverty programs. Over a period of 30 years, lasting up to the early 80s, there were little per capita income growth and not much reduction in poverty. Official poverty estimates, which were about 45% in the early 1950s, remained the same even in the early 80s. Since the 80s, India's economic growth has been one of the fastest in the world. The growth rate jumped from the average of about to 3.5% a year in the 1970s to about 6% during the 1980s and 1990s. The higher growth rates have helped significantly in the reduction of poverty. Therefore, it is becoming clear that there is a strong link between economic growth and poverty reduction. Economic growth widens opportunities and provides the resources needed to invest in human development. This also encourages people to send their children, including the girl child, to school in the hope of getting better economic returns from investing in education. However, the poor may not be able to take direct advantage from the opportunities created by economic growth. Moreover, growth in the agriculture sector is much below expectations. This has a direct bearing on poverty as a large number of poor people live in villages and are dependent on agriculture. In these circumstances, there is a clear need for targeted anti-poverty programs. Although there are so many schemes which are formulated to affect poverty directly or indirectly, some of them are worth mentioning. Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act 2005 aims to provide 100 days of wage employment to every household to ensure livelihood security in rural areas. It also aimed at sustainable development to address the cause of drought, deforestation, and soil erosion. One third of the proposed jobs have been reserved for women. The scheme provided employment to 220 crores person days of employment to 4.78 crore households. The share of SC/ST women person days in the scheme are 23%, 17%, and 53% respectively. The average wage has increased from 65 in 2006 to 2007 to 132 in 2013 to 14. Recently, in March 2018, the wage rate for unskilled manual workers has been revised. State-wise, the range of wage rate for different states and union territories lies in between Rs 281 per day for the workers in Haryana to Rs 168 per day for the workers of Bihar and Jharkhand. Prime Minister Rozgar Yojana is another scheme which was started in 1993. The aim of the program is to create self-employment opportunities for all educated unemployed youth in rural areas and small towns. They are helped in setting small businesses and industries. Rural Employment Generation Program was launched in 1995. The aim of the program is to create self-employment opportunities in rural areas and small towns. A target for creating 25 lakh new jobs has been set for the program under the 12th five-year plan. Swarna Jayanti Gram Swarozgar Yojana was launched in 1999. The program aims at bringing the assisted poor families above the poverty line by organizing them into self-help groups through a mix of bank credit and government subsidy. Under the Pradhan Mantri Gramodaya Yojana, launched in 2000, additional central assistance is given to state for basic services such as primary health, primary education, rural shelter, rural drinking water, and rural electrification. Another important scheme is Antyodaya Anna Yojana, about which you will be reading more in the next chapter. The results of these programs have been mixed. One of the major reasons for less effectiveness is the lack of proper implementation and right targeting. Moreover, there has been a lot of overlapping of schemes. Despite good intentions, the benefits of these schemes are not fully reached to the deserving poor. Therefore, the major emphasis in recent years is on proper monitoring of all the poverty alleviation programs. The challenges ahead. Poverty has certainly declined in India, but despite the progress, poverty reduction remains India's most compelling challenge. Wide disparities in poverty are visible between rural and urban areas and among different states. Certain social and economic groups are more vulnerable to poverty. Poverty reduction is expected to make better progress in the next 10 to 15 years. This would be possible mainly due to higher economic growth, increasing stress on universal free elementary education, declining population growth, increasing empowerment of the women and the economically weaker sections of society. The official definition of poverty, however, captures only a limited part of what poverty really means to people. It is about a minimum subsistence level of living rather than a reasonable level of living. Many scholars advocate that we must broaden the concept into human poverty. A large number of people may have been able to feed themselves, but do they have education or shelter or health care? or job security or self-confidence? Are they free from caste and gender discrimination? Is the practice of child labor still common? Worldwide experience shows that with development, the definition of what constitutes poverty also changes. Eradication of poverty is always a moving target. Hopefully, we will be able to provide the minimum necessary in terms of only income to all people by the end of the next decade. But the target will move on for many of the bigger challenges that still remain, providing healthcare, education, and job security for all, and achieving gender equality and dignity for the poor. This will be even bigger tasks. Chapter 4: Food Security in India. Overview: Food security means availability, accessibility, and affordability of food to all people at all times. The poor households are more vulnerable to food insecurity whenever there is a problem of production or distribution of food crops. Food security depends on the public distribution system and government vigilance and action at times when this security is threatened. What is food security? Food is essential for living as air is for breathing. But food security means something more than getting two square meals. Food security has following dimensions. A. Availability of food means food production within the country, food imports, and the previous year's stock stored in government granaries. B. Accessibility means food is within reach of every person. C. Affordability implies that an individual has enough money to buy sufficient, safe, and nutritious food to meet one's dietary needs. Thus, food security is ensured in a country only if 1. Enough food is available for all the persons, 2. All persons have the capacity to buy food of acceptable quality, and 3. There is no barrier on access to food. In the 1970s, food security was understood as the availability at all times of adequate supply of basic foodstuffs. UN 1975, Amartya Sen added a new dimension to food security and emphasized the access to food through what he called entitlements, a combination of what one can produce, exchange in the market along with state or other socially provided supplies. Accordingly, there has been a substantial shift in the understanding of food security. The 1995 World Food Summit declared food security at the individual household, regional, national, and global levels exists when all people at all times have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food to meet their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. FOA FAO 1996, page 3. The declaration further recognizes that poverty eradication is essential to improve access to food. Why food security? The poorer section of the society might be food insecure, and most of the times, while persons above the poverty line might also be food insecure when the country faces a national disaster calamity like earthquake, drought, flood, tsunami, widespread failure of crops causing famine, etc. How is food security affected during a calamity? Due to a natural calamity, say total production of food grains decreases. It creates a shortage of food in the affected areas. Due to shortage of food, the prices goes up. At the high prices, some people cannot afford to buy food. If such calamity happens in a very widespread area or is stretched over a longer time period, it may cause a situation of starvation. A massive starvation might like a turn of famine. A famine is characterized by widespread deaths due to starvation and epidemics caused by forced use of contaminated water or decaying food and loss of body resistance due to weakening from starvation. The most devastating famine that occurred in India was of the famine of Bengal in 1943. This famine killed 30 lakh people in the province of Bengal. Nothing like the Bengal famine has happened in India again, but it is disturbing to note that even today there are places like Kalandi and Kashipur in Orissa where famine-like conditions have been existing for many years and where some starvation deaths have also been reported. Starvation deaths are also reported in Baran district of Rajasthan, Palamu district of Jharkhand and many other remote areas during the recent years. Therefore, food security is needed in a country to ensure food at all times. Who are food insecure? Although a large section of people suffer from food and nutrition insecurity in India, the worst affected groups are landless people with little or no land to depend upon, traditional artisans, providers of traditional services, petty self employed workers, and destitutes, including beggars. In the urban areas, the food insecure families are those whose working members are generally employed in ill paid occupations and casual labor market. These workers are largely engaged in seasonal activities and are paid very low wages that just ensure bare survival. Story of Ramu. Ramu works as a casual laborer in agriculture in Raipur village. His eldest son, Somu, who is 10 years old, also works as a pali to look after the cattle of the Sarpanch of the village, Satpal Singh. Somu is employed for the whole year by the Sarpanch and is paid a sum of rupees 1000 for this work. Ramu has three more sons and two daughters, but they are too young to work in the field. His wife, Sunhari is also part-time working as house cleaner for the livestock. Removing and managing cow dung, she gets half liter milk and some cooked food along with vegetables for her daily work. Besides, she also works in the field along with her husband in the busy season and supplements his earnings. Agriculture, being a seasonal activity, employs Ramu only during times of sowing, transplanting, and harvesting. He remains unemployed for about 4 months during the period of plant consolidation and maturing in a year. He looks for work in other activities. Sometimes he gets employment in bricklaying or in construction activities in the village. By all his efforts, Ramu is able to earn enough either in cash or kind for him to buy essential for 2 square meal for his family. However, during the days when he is to get unable to get some work, he and his family really face difficulties, and sometimes his small kids have to sleep without food. Milk and vegetables are not a regular part of meals in the family. Ramu is food insecure during 4 months when he remains unemployed because of the seasonal nature of agriculture work. Why is agriculture a seasonal activity? Why is Ramu unemployed for about 4 months in a year? What does Ramu do when he is unemployed? Who are supplementing income in Ramu's family? Why does Ramu face difficulty when he is unable to have work? When is Ramu food insecure? Story of Ahmed. Ahmed is a rickshaw puller in Bangalore. He has shifted from Jhumri Talaiya along with his three brothers, two sisters, and old parents. He stays in a jhuggi. The survival of all members of his family depends on his daily earnings from pulling rickshaw. However, he does not have a secured employment and his earnings fluctuate every day. During some days, he get enough earning for him to save some amount after buying all his day-to-day necessities. On other days, he barely earns enough to buy his daily necessities. However, fortunately, Ahmed has a yellow card, which is PDS card for below poverty line people. With this card, Ahmed gets sufficient quantity of wheat, rice, sugar, and kerosene oil for his daily use. He gets these essentials at half of the market price. He purchases his monthly stock during a particular day when the ration shop is open for below poverty people. In this way, Ahmed is able to eke out of his survival with less than sufficient earnings for his big family, where he is the only earning member. Let's discuss, does Ahmed have a regular income from rickshaw pulling? How does the yellow card help Ahmed run his family even with small earnings from rickshaw pulling? The social composition, along with the inability to buy food, also plays a role in food insecurity. The SCs, STs, and some sections of the OBCs, lower caste among them, who have either poor land base or very low land productivity, are prone to food insecurity. The people affected by natural disasters who have to migrate to other areas in search of work are also among the most food insecure people. A high incidence of malnutrition prevails among women. This is a matter of serious concern as it puts even the unborn baby at the risk of malnutrition. A large proportion of pregnant and nursing mothers and children under the age of 5 years constitute an important segment of the food insecure population. According to the National Health and Family Surveys, 1998-1999, the number of such women and children is approximately 11 crore. The food insecure people are disproportionately large in some regions of the country, such as economically backward states with high incidence of poverty, tribal and remote areas, regions more prone to natural disasters, etc. In fact, the states of Uttar Pradesh, eastern and southeastern parts, Bihar, Jharkhand, Orissa, West Bengal, Chhattisgarh, parts of Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra account for largest number of food insecure people in the country. Hunger is another aspect indicating food insecurity. Hunger is not just an expression of poverty, it brings about poverty. The attainment of food security therefore involves eliminating current hunger and reducing the risks of future hunger. Hunger has chronic and seasonal dimensions. Chronic hunger is a consequence of diets persistently inadequate in terms of quantity and or quality. Poor people suffer from chronic hunger because of their very low income and in turn inability to buy food even for survival. Seasonal hunger is related to cycles of food growing and harvesting. This is prevalent in rural areas because of the seasonal nature of agriculture activities and in urban areas because of casual laborers. Example, there is less work for casual construction laborers during the rainy season. This type of hunger exists when a person is unable to get work for the entire year. The percentage of seasonal as well as chronic hunger has declined in India. As shown in the above table, India is aiming at self-sufficiency in food grains since independence. After independence, Indian policy makers adopted all measures to achieve self-sufficiency in food grains. India adopted a new strategy in agriculture which has resulted in green revolution, especially in the production of wheat and rice. Indira Gandhi, the then Prime Minister of India, officially recorded the impressive strides of green revolution in agriculture by releasing a special stamp entitled Wheat Revolution in July 1968. The success of wheat was later replicated in rice. The increase in food grains was, however, disproportionate. The highest rate of growth was achieved in Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh, which was 44.01 and 30.21 million tons in 2015 to 16. The total food grain production was 252.22 million tons in 15-16 and it has changed to 275.68 million ton in 2016 to 17. Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh recorded a significant production in field of wheat which was 26.87 and 17.69 million tons in 2015 to 2016 respectively. West Bengal and UP on the other hand recorded significant production of rice 15.75 and 12.51 million tons in 2015 to 16 respectively. Food security in India. Since the advent of the Green Revolution in the early 1970s, the country has avoided famine even during adverse weather conditions. India has become self sufficient in food grains during the last 30 years because of a variety of crops grown all over the country. The availability of food grains, even in adverse weather conditions, or otherwise at the country level has further been ensured with a carefully designed food security system by the government. This system has two components. One is buffer stock and second is public distribution system. What is a buffer stock? Buffer stock is the stock of food grains, mainly wheat and rice, procured by the government through the Food Corporation of India. The FCI purchased wheat and rice from the farmers in states where there is surplus production. The farmers are paid a pre-announced price of their crops. This price is called minimum support system. The MSP is declared by the government every year before the sowing season to provide incentives to farmers for raising the production of these crops. The purchased food grains are stored in granaries. Do you know why this buffer stock is created by the government? This is done to distribute food grains in the deficit areas and among the poorer strata of the society at a price lower than the market price, also known as issue price. This also helps resolve the problem of shortage of food during adverse weather conditions or during the periods of calamity. What is the public distribution system? The food procured by the FCI is distributed through government regulated ration shops among the poorer section of the society. This is called the public distribution system. Ration shops are now present in most localities, villages, towns, and cities. There are about 5.5 lakh ration shops all over the country. Ration shops, also known as fair price shops, keep stock of food grains, sugar, and kerosene for cooking. These items are sold to people at a price lower than the market price. Any family with a ration card can buy a stipulated amount of these items. Example 35 kg of grains, 5 liters of kerosene, 5 kg of sugar, etc. every month from the nearby ration shop. There are three kinds of ration cards. One is anti-Yodhya cards for the poorest of the poor. Second is BPL cards for those below poverty line. And third is APL cards for all others. The introduction of rationing in India dates back to the 1940s against the backdrop of Bengal famine. The rationing system was revived in the wake of an acute food shortage during the 1960s, prior to the Green Revolution in the wake of the high incidence of poverty levels. As reported by the NSSO in the mid 1970s, three important food intervention programs were introduced. One is public distribution system, is PDS for food grains, in existence earlier but strengthened thereafter. Second is Integrated Child Development Service, ICDS, introduced in 1975 on an experimental basis, and Food for Work, introduced in 1977 to 78. Over the years, several new programs have been launched and some have been restructured with the growing experience of administering the programs. At present, there are several poverty alleviation programs, mostly in rural areas, which have an explicit food component also, while some of the programs such as PDS, midday meals, etc., are exclusively food security programs. Most of the PAPs also enhance food security. Employment programs greatly contribute to food security by increasing the income of the poor. The Food Security Act 2013. This act provides for food and nutritional security life at affordable prices and enables people to live a life with dignity. Under this act, 75% of the rural population and 50% of the urban population have been categorized as eligible households for food security. Current status of the distribution system. Public distribution system is the most important step taken by the government of India towards ensuring food security in the beginning. The coverage of PDS was universal with no discrimination between the poor and the non-poor. Over the years, the policy related to PDS has been revised to make it more efficient and targeted. In 1992, revamped public distribution system RPDS was introduced in 1700 blocks in the country. The target was to provide the benefits of PDS to remote and backward areas. From June 1997, in a renewed attempt, targeted public distribution system, which is TPDS, was introduced to adopt the principle of targeting the poor in all areas. It was for the first time that a differential price policy was adopted for poor and non-poor. Further, in 2000, two special schemes were launched, which is Antyodaya Anna Yojana AAY and Annapurna Scheme APS with special target groups of poorest of the poor and indigent senior citizens, respectively. The functioning of these two schemes was linked with the existing network of the PDS. Some important features of PDS are summarized in Table 4.3. The PDS has proved to be the most effective instrument of government policy over the years in stabilizing prices and making food available to consumers at affordable prices. It has been instrumental in averting widespread hunger and famine by supplying food from surplus regions of the country to the deficit ones. In addition, the prices have been under revision in favor of poor households in general. The system, including the minimum support price and procurement, has contributed to an increase in food grain production and provided income security to farmers in certain regions. However, the public distribution system has faced severe criticism on several grounds. Instances of hunger are prevalent despite overflowing granaries. FCI godowns are overflowing with grains, with some rotting away and some being eaten by rats. Graph 4.2 shows the difference in food grain stocks in Central Pool and its stocking norms. Antyodaya Anna Yojana AAY was launched in December 2000. Under the scheme, 1 crore of the poorest among the BPL families covered under the targeted public distribution system were identified. Poor families were identified by the respective state rural development departments through a below poverty line BPL survey. 25 kilograms of grains were made available to each eligible family at a highly subsidized rate of rupees 2 per kg of for wheat and rupees 3 per kg for rice. This quantity has been enhanced from 25 to 35 kgs with effect from April 2002. The scheme has been further expanded twice by additional 50 lakh BPL families in June 2003 and in August 2004. With this increase, 2 crore families have been covered under the AAY. Subsidy is a payment that a government makes to a producer to supplement the market price of a commodity. Subsidies can keep consumer prices low while maintaining a higher income for domestic producers. In 2014, the stock of wheat and rice with FCI was 65.3 million tons, which was much more than the minimum buffer norms. However, these remain consistently higher than the buffer norms. The situation improved with the distribution of food grains under different schemes launched by the government. There is a general consensus that high level of buffer stocks of food grains is very undesirable and can be wasteful. The storage of massive food stock has been responsible for high carry cost in addition to wastage and deterioration in grain quality. Freezing of MSP for a few years should be considered seriously. The increased food grains procurement at enhanced MSP is the result of the pressure exerted by leading food grain producing states such as Punjab, Haryana, and Andhra Pradesh. Moreover, as the procurement is concentrated in a few prosperous regions: Punjab, Haryana, Western Uttar Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, and to a lesser extent in West Bengal, and mainly of two crops, wheat and rice. Increase in MSP has induced farmers, particularly in surplus states, to divert land from production to coarse grains, which is the staple food of the poor, to the production of rice and wheat. The intensive utilization of water in the cultivation of rice has also led to environmental degradation and fall in the water level, threatening the sustainability of the agricultural development in these states. The rising minimum support prices have raised the maintenance cost of procuring food grains by the government. Rising transportation and storage costs of the FCI are other contributing factors in this increase. As per the NSSO report number 558, in rural India, the per person per month has declined from 6.38 kg in 2004 to 2005 to 5.98 kg in 2011 to 12. In urban India, the per person per month consumption of rice too has declined from 4.71 kg in 2004 to 05 to 4.19 kg in 2011 to 12. Per capita consumption of PDS rice has doubled in rural India and increased by 66% in urban India since 2004 to 2005. The per capita consumption of PDS wheat has doubled since 2004 to 2005 in both rural and urban India. PDS dealers are sometimes found resorting to malpractices like diverting the grains to open market to get better margins, selling poor quality grains at ration shops, irregular opening of the shops, etc. It is common to find that ration shops regularly have unsold stocks of poor quality grains left. This has proved to be a big problem. When ration shops are unable to sell, a massive stock of food grains piles up with the FCI. In recent years, there is another factor that has led to the decline of the PDS. Earlier, every family, poor and non-poor, had a ration card with a fixed quota of items such as rice, wheat, sugar, etc. These were sold at the same low price to every family. The three types of cards and the range of prices that you see today did not exist. A large number of families could buy food grains from the ration shops subject to a fixed quota. These included low income families whose incomes were marginally higher than the below poverty line families. Now, with TPDS of three different prices, any family above the poverty line gets very little discount at the ration shop. The price for APL family is almost as high as open market price, so there is little incentive for them to buy these items from the ration shop. Role of cooperatives in food security. The cooperatives are also playing an important role in food security in India, especially in the southern and western parts of the country. The cooperative societies set up shops to sell low priced goods to poor people. For example, out of all fair price shops running in Tamil Nadu, around 94% are being run by the cooperatives. In Delhi, Mother Dairy is making strides in provision of milk and vegetables to the consumers at controlled rate decided by government of Delhi. Amul is another success story of cooperatives in milk and milk products from Gujarat. It has brought about the white revolution in the country. There are a few examples of many more cooperatives running in different parts of the country, ensuring food security of different sections of society. Similarly, in Maharashtra, Academy of Development Science has facilitated a network of NGOs for setting up grains banks in different regions. ADS organizes training and capacity building programs on food security for NGOs. Grain banks are now slowly taking shape in different parts of Maharashtra. ADS efforts to set up grain banks to facilitate replication through other NGOs and to influence the government's policy on food security are thus paying rich dividends. The ADS Grain Bank program is acknowledged as a successful and innovative food security intervention.